gentlemen, and welcome to Monarchist Minute Royalist News in the US of A. I'm Victor Smith. Tonight, we will be discussing royal patronages and how they can be used to further the image of a monarchy. But first, the Colorado River is getting drained, and tributaries of said river are going to be experiencing an ecological disaster in the coming years. We will have that. Plus, Prince Andrew is getting cut off by Queen Elizabeth with regard to his legal defense in any upcoming trials he may face with regard to Epstein-style things. Also, the Kazakhstan situation is undergoing there was a color revolution in Kazakhstan. We will have more on that, but first, I feel it is a moral obligation for us to reflect on the reactions of our nation's leaders to the anniversary of what happened on January 6, 2021 in Washington, D.C. Joining me today are Charles York, William Stout, John Armis, our usual suspects, and a special guest today, Fritz Imperial. Fritz, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody watching us on YouTube on Monday and as well as listening to us live, and give your thoughts on what happened a year ago yesterday, just as a sort of introduction.
Yeah, well, hi, thank you for having me on. I'm Fritz Imperial, a noted weeb and lack of content creator, I guess, but I've been trying to step it up in recent months, but I'm thinking of, because my most viewed video is my Why I'm a Monarchist video, and I'm thinking, since I can't believe it's already the 5-year anniversary since I made that, I'm gonna be making a follow-up to it, but yeah. My reaction to it is, I mean, this is just classic authoritarian or regime behavior, right? This is what happened on January 6th last year was it's like what it was a bunch of boomers. This is how I think it went down, it's actually pretty simple. The election, people genuinely thought that there was a lot of shenanigans going on with the integrity of the 2020 election, and they felt like none of their what they felt as legitimate concerns were being taken seriously, and none of the challenges were even being listened to by the courts, and they felt that on the 6th, when the votes were officially being counted by Congress, their entire democracy or their votes and their political power were being taken away by a bunch of, rat-faced lying congressmen. And so I think a lot of them got riled up, especially when Trump, kind of made his speech on that day. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were some feds that may have egged some people on, but I think it was just a natural reaction of a lot of angry people. But the problem is that it became perfect fodder, it became perfect propaganda material for the regime, so that they can never, ever let it go. And, because people are inclined to believe whatever the media tells them, they think that, oh, this is like worse than 9/11 and a whole bunch of people were killed, when really that's not the case at all. And, but essentially, when people were cheering it on, is that this was them slapping the regime in the face as hard as they can, which felt really good, but it didn't actually have any effect on it. And so now it's kind of become another... The only reason it's kind of backfiring or not being that effective for the regime is the fact that they do with everything, take it and run with it way too far, and it just becomes apparent that it's all nonsense.
Yeah, that's... And they also like to think that in spite of basically everything, they still think that they aren't getting influenced by things, And at the end of the day, the media that is supporting the regime, everything's going top down, whether we think so or not. And a lot of people in that audience, and we can get into whataboutisms, but either way, whether you're burning down a city or you're marching into the Capitol building, both are bad. I would really hate to see what it would have been like on that day if the same rioters that burned down half the country walked into the Capitol building. I don't think we would have had a Capitol building. And I think it goes to show you, ultimately, conservatives in this country are essentially boomer libertarians in a way. They're not really conservative in a traditional sense. They're more so libertarians or liberals, classical. I mean, sometimes I consider myself a classical liberal, but that's been fallen by the wayside with me.
That's pretty disgusting.
But yeah, it's just like that. They're libertarians masquerading as conservatives, and whatever they do, they just want to be really left alone, and they kind of they use that thing as they're not political activists. Conservatives, by and large, aren't really political activists unless they're really, really into it. And basically, every liberal is a political activist, and that's when the top really managed to mobilize activists and cover up their own faults and do things like that. And when you have a conservative, because even though they are libertarians, even though they are liberals, you still, looking at them, they are considered conservatives to many of the left. They are considered conservatives, regardless of whether
by the left.
Too. They are considered hyper conservative, and fascists aren't really conservative in a traditional sense either.
But again, the narrative of the left is everything that is evil and right wing is fascism.
Well, no, I mean. Well, I mean, not well. No, right? I mean, I just use that one. I want to interject. It's the problem is that they sort of. I mean, I kind of ironically say anybody to the left of '90s Bill Clinton is a communist. I kind of say that as a joke, even though I may brand everybody as a commie. But no, I mean the problem that America has had since its beginning is that our conservatives are really just what we would now call brand as classical liberals. I'm actually reading Puritan's Empire by Charles Colomb, which is now considered mandatory reading. I am taking authority, and it's and it's like we never really had, in the proper sense, a conservative movement. I mean, everything that we call conservative,
the loyalists.
Oh well, I mean after independence.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, everything after independence has just been what we would now brand classical liberals, because they still wanted to radically transform society and all that, and they still sought this sort of liberating the individual from all these social restraints. Never mind that once all the royal governors were gone, they started to these oligarchs started to raise the taxes on the poor farmers to the point where they sometimes rebelled. But anyways, it's we that's our problem as a country. We never had a good conservative movement. The Catholics in America were kind of just lulled into this. All we need to do is get them to accept us. So our Catholic ancestors never particularly did anything to create a strong conservative movement. And while there were certainly, I guess, figures that I would feel comfortable calling conservatives, they never managed to form any sort of real tangible movement. So our conservatives are just liberals.
Yeah, our conservatives are religious libertarians. They are personally religious, but they also, and they'll talk your ear off about how they are religious and they don't believe in things like gay marriage and traditionally
they do now, apparently,
conservative positions. but it's quickly
Did
dissolving.
you say, Fritz? I couldn't really hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say a lot of them believe in gay marriage now, right?
Well,
Because that's
yeah.
well, no, I
Well,
mean it's that I'm personally. It's like it's the same line as I'm personally pro-life, but politically pro-choice. I mean, if you know I see somebody getting stabbed in a dark alley, I'm personally pro not stabbing people, but I'm politically for it. It's that sort of thing.
Anyway, now that our full, sorry for cutting everybody off, but now that our full complement is back, William Stout had to grab something to eat that he cooked. We will now go into the next topic, which is the situation in Kazakhstan that William Stout will brief us on. William, go ahead.
Thank you, Victor. Real quick, though, I want to say something about January 6th. Growing up, I remember the whole 2016 meltdown debacle and finding it very, very comical. I was in that generation, that group of people. And let me tell you, something like that is only funny once. When it happens twice, it's very, very concerning. And to watch the same people who criticized and made fun of the liberal meltdown over Trump getting elected flip out and storm the Capitol because Trump lost, I think is very discerning, disgraceful, and really shows the true colors of what the American political system is.
I mean, I think it
yeah.
kind of shows that it's starting to crack, really, because I don't think it's disgraceful at this point, because I have no respect for and don't even want to consider the current government legitimate anymore. So I don't really care what happens to it. I'm happy anytime it gets embarrassed.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. I only treat the current U.S. government as legitimate in the sense that there's no other authority. As soon as there was any sort of authority that could actually hold this country that was better than this thing, which isn't a very high bar to set, it's like, yeah, Congress, shoo, leave me. Bye. I'm sick of. I'm no more taxes for you.
Yeah, I mean, like I was gonna say earlier, the religious right or the religious libertarians are becoming secular libertarians, and that's what I was about to tack onto that. And in addition, none of this is traditionally conservative, and you see the pushing, the shoving match, and we'll get to the patronage thing and positive government influence and positive government developments. And we can only go back from here. We can only fall back from here. Like at this point, you can only accelerate the damage. Because the conservatives are libertarian. They'll stop things, but they won't draw things back. And the Democrats are smash and grab type. They want to accelerate at least the current iteration of liberals and radical, the ones on the radical end, which are dominating the movement right now. And I hope they are a vocal minority. And they are pushing things and pushing things. And when you have no conservative voices, this kind of thing happens. And it's pulling the government in two different directions. And that absolutely will not work for stability. It's proven not to work for stability. Even if a president does do something good, it's always counteracted by the opposite. When the other party gets in office, we are really in a two-party state, and the two parties are pulling the country apart.
I mean, I would say we actually more live in a one party. We live in a one and a shadow party state, in the sense that you have the actual party, the Democrats, and then to kind of use the mold bug terminology, is the Republicans are the outer party. They exist not necessarily as controlled opposition, but they're completely incapable of making any action on their own. At most, they temporarily halt some of the more extreme aspects, but ultimately they are still on board with neoliberalism.
And Yeah, it's
And
super.
it's like when the Republicans held the trifecta at the federal level for 2 years, they had a chance to do things like call a constitutional amendment to ban abortion or call for XYZ changes, and they just didn't.
The only thing the Republican Party can do when it's in power is tax cuts.
That's all
I
they've
mean, it's
ever
like
been able to
that's
do.
great. Okay, we are I think we're overburdened by tax. That's wonderful, but they can't even do the next logical step, which is cut the budget, because if they're going to cut taxes and we already have a deficit,
They will never cut money to the military or foreign aid. They will never do that.
well, and those aren't even the biggest ticket items. I mean, nobody.
Well,
This is the
defense is one of the
It
biggest.
is. The
Actually.
military is the biggest ticket item.
Well, no. I mean, it depends on how broad you want to be. Social Security is a quarter of the U.S. budget. But
You think that's going to be popular? Republicans cutting Social Security?
no,
Yeah, that's
it's not
going
going to be popular, and that's what I was going to say. Is that in a system like ours, where we have to appeal to a lowest, I don't want to say this, a lowest common denominator, nobody who runs on the fiscally smart, which sounds better, keep Social Security, or Social Security as a system is very inefficient, and we believe that it would be better to create it. We believe it would be better if we cut Social Security and encourage people to actually live with to have their parents move in with them when they are old, or to have those people save themselves when they are retired, choosing how they invest their money. Which of those sounds better? Which of those which of those would sound good on a bumper? I mean, that is I mean that's really the problem. I mean, in a you can't in republics like ours, uh doing something that is for the objective good, that is against the will of the people, or more specifically the oligarchs controlling the people, is impossible.
You mean the donor
Anyway,
class?
anyway, moving on to Kazakhstan,
Oh yeah.
William.
Yeah.
5-minute divergence.
Started, protests that started over rising fuel prices have turned into a full-scale insurrection against the government on multiple fronts in multiple places across the country, mainly regarding their relationship and their status as a satellite state of Russia. Kazakhstan has remained a satellite state of Russia since the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Soviet Union due to its being a member of the Confederacy of Independent States, which was a pseudo-organization similar to one of the precursors of the EU that helped former Soviet satellite states work together. As a result, what happened was that Russia used it as a political hegemon to exercise power and authority over the former members of the Soviet Union and the former members of the Russian Empire. As you can imagine, the oil and gas that Kazakhstan uses probably comes from Russia. Who benefits the most from the rising gas prices? Russia. And so the protesters are angry about how the Russian government exerts so much influence and control over what is supposed to be an independent Kazakhstan, and how the president of Kazakhstan and his government are considered corrupt and puppets of Russia. Anyway, the protesters are armed. They're trying to overthrow the government. Police and army members are defecting to the protest. The president has called Russia in to basically stomp out the protest, and the little green men are very much on their way. There is
Aliens?
truth in this, and that this is taking pressure off of Ukraine, as Russia can't deal with both Kazakhstan and Ukraine at the same time. The
Why
question
not?
is, will this turn into a second Soviet-Afghan war? Will the US get involved? And how does this reflect on Russia's declining status as a superpower?
Well, as something of a Russia, besides their anti-Catholic stance, Russia kind of chill, I guess, kind of dude, and the killing journalists. That ain't right. But anyways,
It isn't?
well, assuming that those journalists didn't actually deserve it. Well, I don't know. I don't think that just having straight up assassinating people is ever really necessarily right from a moral policy, unless not killing them would bring about greater evils. Anyways, um, I'm not too particularly familiar with what the situation in Afghanistan before was. Besides, I know that Russia will go south to protect its interests. If Russia has to go south to protect its interests, it will do that, right? Kazakhstan is the launch pad for in more ways than one for Russian ambitions, because firstly that's where their rockets kind of take off from, so they're quite literally the launch pad, and and they and keeping Kazakhstan in the fold is going to be important, because you have all those other stan countries like Uzbekistan and whatever that are further south of Kazakhstan. So Russia, naturally, if she wants to keep her interest in the region intact, has a vested interest in keeping Kazakhstan in the fold. Now, I have heard from somebody, and I haven't bothered to check this because it was I heard it like 20 minutes ago. Um, that the State Department is backing the protesters, which makes me really, really concerned about being like, yay, about the whole thing. Now, I don't exactly know what exactly these people are demanding. All I know is essentially what Will told me, and my background information, my limited background information on the region. But I don't want any bloodshed. I don't want any more bloodshed, man. It's the situation in Kazakhstan, because Kazakhstan, you have to understand, is very foreign in more ways than one, right? Because it's like Ukraine and that situation, we're still dealing broadly with a European country where I have like concerns about the Catholic population there, although they're mainly in the West, so anything Russia would realistically annex doesn't particularly involve that. But um, but with Kazakhstan, their population is probably less than 1% Catholic. It's mostly Muslim. So I don't necessarily have that
Because
same connection that I have with that.
why
So I'm
why
not
I
as
find
inclined to.
oh, I'm
Huh?
sorry. So which
Oh,
is
what were
why
you
I
gonna
find
say?
it funny, because a prominent conservative voice within the Catholic Church is Cardinal or Archbishop Athanasius Schneider, who is from the former, Volga German minority there, and is actually from Kazakhstan.
Yeah, I know that yeah, I do remember that there was because there was only Europe is weird in that sometimes different ethnicities show up in places you wouldn't expect, and the Germans are just one of those. Before the end of the Second World War, there were pockets of Germans like everywhere in
No,
Eastern
yeah,
Europe.
the Ostsiedlung wasn't just them taking, the areas that became Prussia and now modern Poland, but there were Volga Germans that were all across like central Russia. There were the Baltic Germans. There were the
Yeah, I know. It's like
and then they all got genocided by the Soviets because they either left because they're like, we don't, because
we
they
don't
tended
want
to
to.
because they tended to be, a lot better off than the people around them, just because Germans have a generally,
A lot of them got
German
killed in
culture.
retaliatory killings as a result of World War II.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a
yeah,
forgotten
but
genocide.
anyways, I guess to sum up my thing and to stop rambling, I don't want any bloodshed. And I'm just gonna assume, and maybe I'm completely wrong, I'm just gonna assume here that neither side is a side that I would feel comfortable actually supporting, because that's just the way it is with so many conflicts throughout the world today.
You
It's
know what
just
I
like,
find ironic is that if the idea is the protesters are upset because they're like, we don't want to be a Russian satellite state anymore. We don't like our corrupt politicians, and it's like, So would you? And they're like, so apparently the alternative that they are going for, considering, because I think it's probably appropriate to consider this a attempted color revolution as occurred in Ukraine and Georgia, is like, but apparently they do want to become a puppet state of the United States and NATO and have corrupt politicians that are just pro-Western.
That is very
What
well. I mean, it would be
And
good for the United States as it's currently constituted, but it would be really, really bad for them. I don't think they know
what they're
what
getting into.
exactly they're getting themselves into. Anyway,
They
moving
want gay
on.
pride parades in
more
Astana.
concerned about China moving in if Russia moves out, considering proximity?
Yes,
honestly,
yes.
Either way, the three main choices are us with our liberal hexscape culturally, which will kill the spirit of their nation. The Russians, who, I mean, the Kazakhstan hasn't fallen apart yet, but I guess life isn't that great there, so whatever. And the Chinese, who, let's just say, they aren't really great with with the Stani peoples.
China
it seems like they're stuck between
a place where
three
extremists
rock.
3
Uh,
rocks and 3 hard places.
yeah,
yeah.
I honestly everything after the Bolsheviks shot the Romanovs has been failed over there. I don't trust the Russians. I don't trust the Americans sticking our fingers where we don't belong, and I don't trust the Chinese. So everything over there is just cursed.
Kazakhstan alone.
Speaking of things that are cursed, we'll move on. We're going to switch one topic for another and cover the other topic then when we get into more monarchy related issues. But on the home front, speaking of cursed things, the Colorado River is getting very, very bad very, very quickly. It is going to become an ecological disaster unless things change dramatically. The western United States could be in grave danger from the ecological issues surrounding the Colorado River. And to give us more information on this topic, Tom Dude sent this Google Doc to us, which he wrote. He started a YouTube video. One of the lakes that the Colorado River feeds into is draining at a very rapid rate, and I don't know what the best solution to overcome this issue is, other than abandon all hope of inhabiting Las Vegas.
Destroy all the dams? I don't know.
No, this is the problem. Okay, we're dealing with a region, and obviously, I don't think any of us are ecological experts here, but we're dealing with a region.
I think it would be a better idea to have Tom be present up here for this. So, Tom, you have just received an invite to speak. You can go ahead and describe this in more detail for us so that we are a little bit better informed than my little incoherent rambling. So, Tom, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Hi, thanks for having me on here. So, currently the situation in the Colorado River has been being watched since about August 16th. That's when the federal government declared a Colorado River water shortage. This is the first time this has happened in our country's history. So, the reason why the Colorado River is such a big deal right now is that it's the main source of both power and water for many of the United States Southwest. Cities like Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Los Angeles almost completely rely on this. And without this kind of water, these cities would not only just lose power from no water going through the dams or have any drinkable water due to, well, lack of water, but also this would cut off a lot of agricultural output. This drop in agricultural output can be seen in Arizona, where a water restriction has been put in place for farmers, effectively reducing their water allowance, I believe it is, by 20%. Many farmers believe that this might reduce to not getting any water by 2023 if things get worse.
Why are people farming in Arizona anyways? There's a kind of a thing you're not supposed to farm in the desert.
Northern Arizona is actually not all that desertified.
No, yeah, when I've visited there, there's actually a lot of forest. There's a lot of trees and fertile land up there.
Hmm. I went to the national park up there just this August. It's beautiful.
Isn't it?
Hmm. Anyways, so this is a big deal. Now, 25 million Americans rely on drinking water in the states of Arizona, Nevada, California, and in general, 40 million rely on the river for other purposes, which is roughly 12% of the US population. Now, there are a lot of different beliefs on what the reason behind this is. US geological surveyors, for instance, believe that this is due to aridification of the region caused by increasing temperatures. Others cite dramatic population increase, I might say, in the region, while others have cited that it might be exacerbated by change in precipitation patterns. Either way, it's still a big deal that we should be, dealing with right about now, I believe.
It's been a big deal for a while, and it's been one we've ignored. The estuary at the mouth of the Colorado River, where it dumps into the Gulf of California, has been considered one of the most threatened ecosystems in the world because there have been several years now where no water has flown into the estuary, the swampland around it, because the water from the Colorado River is being consumed before it reaches the ocean.
I mean, it's. I'm kind of hopeful that because California's population has shrunk for the first time in its history, that hopefully people will start. I don't know. I mean, there one solution that somebody has proposed to alleviate this situation, and it's been proposed several times, is I presumably like Michigan or maybe Lake Superior, but hooking up the Great Lakes and having a long pipeline go 2/3 of the way across the country and sending it over there. Now, as a proud Michiganian, if you come near our grubby lakes, we will whip you like we whip the Ohioan. Oh, I got an Ohioan right
Came up
here
with
with
this
me.
crackpot plan anyways. We have desalination technology.
Oh, well, the problem with that is it's expensive and power consuming as heck. And also a little bit of extra brine thrown into like the Pacific Ocean, the largest thing in the planet, probably won't be that big of a deal, but brine isn't exactly good for like the underwater ecosystem in the immediate facility.
We can use it for
Vicinity, not
industrial
facility.
processes. We can make chlorine out of it.
Ooh.
We could use
We
it for industrial processes and stuff. We could extract minerals and stuff from it. There's no reason anyone should be talking about making a pipeline that stretches across 2/3 of the country to make sure that some hippies in California can have perfectly manicured lawns in the middle of San Fernando Valley.
I mean, no, I mean, I think that honestly, once again, I'm not an expert of any of this. All my information on this comes from 11th grade science class on Earth. I forget what it was called, but it started in outer space. It was Earth science, but it started in outer space because that's how that works. But anyways, no, I mean, I think that the biggest problem with desalination is it's really expensive. And that's kind of
And
I
we
mean that's the
need to basically desalinization is great, but what with what money?
yeah. Well, I mean, not with California's tax base. Oh,
I
I'm
do have
sorry, I
to say,
shouldn't laugh.
By the way, only 2% of the Earth's
Yeah.
water is drinkable, and most of that is frozen. Tom, do you have any solutions you would like to recommend on the Colorado River stuff?
well, now I'm not exactly an expert on the subject. I
Neither.
don't even know
Sorry.
if there really is a solution. I feel in the next couple decades we're going to be seeing some mass migrations coming from the Southwest to the rest of the country.
As opposed to what? We've been dealing with that for the past couple decades.
Well, it'll
No,
be
I mean it's
incredibly
probably gonna head
exacerbated
south.
when Los Angeles and Las Vegas and Phoenix almost completely run out of water.
Yeah, I mean, eight.
Imagine that, building massive cities in an area without an easy supply of water and then filling them with manicured lawns, gardens, golf courses, and anything like that wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, I
To
mean,
reference a character from King of the Hill, those cities are a monument to man's arrogance.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Thank you very much.
definitely.
Thank you very much for joining us, Tom. If anyone has any final thoughts on this issue, I'd like to move on as quickly as possible.
But yeah, I have no real opinion on it. It's not. I have no knowledge on it.
Maybe
I'll
if
admit
Hey,
anything.
hey, look! Just
Yeah.
because you have no knowledge doesn't mean you can look at just state your opinions. And look at me.
Los Angeles finally dehydrates to death, all the hipsters and celebrities will move to the rest of the country and realize that they lived in a bubble and wake up and realize that they're a bunch of idiots.
Yeah,
Ha!
but consider the following: they'll all
They're
move to somewhere else and make that place even worse than LA because they can sustain that.
Anyway, and speaking of things that will not be sustained, the UK royal budget for Prince Andrew's legal defense is now officially zero. The Queen of England, or sorry, the Queen of the UK, has stated that she will not be using any family money to help in Prince Andrew's legal defense in any particular court cases he may be a part of with regard to stuff that allegedly occurred on Epstein Island.
That
Big
transition was
Put
smooth.
Prince Andrew in the corner where he belongs.
Anybody have any thoughts on this issue before we go into the big monarchist topic of the episode?
I say good. He needs to get the full brunt of the law, not be protected, not be anything like that. Believing in monarchy doesn't believe that monarchs get special treatment because of this, or monarchs' families get a special treatment. If anything, he should get punished worse for his using his position to abuse and take advantage of young women and other things like that. There's no excuse for it, and frankly, it's detestable. And the royal family should denounce him and, frankly, disinherit him.
Well, what is there to disinherit him from? I mean, Elizabeth has a child, multiple children, and Charles has 2 children, and those 2 children have children, so Andrew is absolutely irrelevant.
Well,
Well,
in
yeah, but
all
he's still
honesty,
technically the Duke of York, isn't he?
yeah, he
So,
needs to be stripped of every title he has.
which is kind of does disservice to the role, because like you have the Cardinal Duke of York, who was the totally legitimate Henry the Ninth, and I say totally legitimately as in totally legitimately, not sarcastically. You have like him, who was like really great. He gave up like his any temporal rights he had to pursue his vocation, and then any rights he was entitled to, and then you had this Duke of York, which I'm going to assume by the way you guys are talking, it's like 99.99% he totally did this.
It has not been proven in court. We have not even gone to trial for it yet, but his name
Well, all
has.
of this is if he is responsible for this, but he definitely doesn't not need the royal family's support for this. If he's innocent, he can prove it in a court of law on his own.
Oh, okay, because the way you guys were phrasing it, it kind of just seemed like it's like there were photos or something.
Well, there is a photo.
I do not wish to see it.
Oh, it's not bad.
Apparently, there isn't evidence. According to Jesse, there is no evidence of Prince M doing anything illegal.
Okay, then please don't take that tone, and I should not be so quick to judge there. But anyways,
Anyway, the trial is unofficially concluded. That's what Jesse said.
okay. I guess
Thank you, Jesse.
don't do anything stupid, guys. Please don't do anything stupid and immoral. Just don't.
Anyway, so okay, moving on to a topic that I think we all can discuss: royal what was the phrase you said?
Patronage.
Royal patronage of certain things. You know how the U.S. government basically underwrites the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts? There are several royal things that happen in the UK that are promoted by the royal family, like, for example, royal charities, etc. And that is all very, very good. Now, how can this work here in the United States, given that we have a quasi framework for this already?
Well, I guess if you don't mind me taking the lead, since I was the one who
Of course.
raised the topic. Um, I mean, we've already had a history of royal patronage even after independence. Once again, reading from Puritan's Empire, I expect you all to submit your book reports to me by next Tuesday. No, but anyways, it's different kings donated altars and chalices to different parishes across the country, and it's that sort of thing that really should be taken into consideration because you know ultimately that does symbolize, I mean, that does represent something, the idea that um these different monarchs still care about their, I guess, now former subjects who are across the sea or whatever, but more importantly, that idea that the state should support things that are good and true, like the church, but also things like there was the royal academies, across Europe in the 16 and 1700s. There were, royal academies for the sciences and royal academies for this and that and art and all of these good things. And that and monarchs patronizing things that are good and true will have a positive impact on society. And I feel, just thinking about this off the top of my head, this is something unique to monarchism in the sense that the stuff that the U.S. government promotes is almost always going to be bound not in the common good in of itself, but if it is, it's going to be because the regime likes it and it suits its interest. So when that regime's interests align with the common good, or just like good, I mean, it's like, they're obviously that elected government's gonna support that, but our if the U.S. federal government, I mean, like, look at PBS, which is like partly taxpayer funded.
Completely
Yeah.
taxpayer funded, I
Oh,
think.
well, it also receives donations. Actually, it's funny. My grandma gave a few bucks to PBS, and they sent her an entire, like, nice printed schedule that probably cost more to print than what she actually gave them. So that's the bureaucracy. Anyways, um, I mean, it's the sort of stuff that's promoted on PBS, especially PBS Kids these days. It's like, ew. Eee. I don't wanna even get into, they made Mr. Ratburn, I know this is old hat, but as somebody who actually, like, really liked Arthur, like the TV show, they made Mr. Ratburn gay, which is simultaneously, like, just, like, because he was kind of, like, a funny part of my childhood because I kinda liked him as a character, but also the fact that he was, like, the most stereotypically, like, if you imagine, like, a stereotypical gay character, that's him. Okay, he really liked, like, he had all these, like, interests, like Turkish, Ottoman period puppet shows and all these, like, absurd interests, and he talked in, like, this high-pitched voice or whatever, and it's like, "Really? You're playing into that stereotype?" I'm sorry for going off on a tangent, and I know this has been out for, like 2 or 3 years at this point, but it's like, come on, man. Like, that's what you're going with? Our taxpayer money is going to Oh, it's just oh, that's just I don't feel free to
Anyway, let's let somebody else talk so you
Yeah,
can get
yeah.
your breath. Fritz?
What I'd say is the problem is that we're kind of going forward a few steps here because, like, this is gonna sound a little, I don't know, heresy for a monarchist, but I don't have a lot of faith in current European royal families because, as much as we like Queen Elizabeth, because all accounts say that she's a very wonderful person, you have these essentially aging, decrepit dynasties that have no real power, that basically are there to look nice, and because people haven't decided to vote them out of power yet. And you have these kind of impotent, deposed royal families, such as the House of Bourbon, Bonaparte, Hohenzollern, and Habsburg, which I guess they would probably be better, but the thing is they don't really have power. And so, yes, royal patronage is a good thing. I would like it, if we ever, God willing, get some form of, monarchy back, or some form of traditional order back. Yes, they should obviously fund the arts and whatever, but we're kind of, this is a bit wishful thinking, or we're a few steps behind because we don't currently have a system in which the monarchs that actually care are really
Empowered.
Incentivized to do anything?
Yes, because this is the thing, is we say, as I just said, we say all this nice stuff about Queen Elizabeth and all that, but the thing is, legally speaking, she does have, legal authority as the sovereign of the United Kingdom. What did she do about mass immigration, abortion, and the LGBT laws? Did she do
Nothing.
anything?
Yep.
Nothing.
If I'm being honest, I don't have much good things to say about her, or many good things to say about her, simply because she refuses to use her power. She refuses to do anything like that. And in my opinion, as far as noble families go, as far as royal families go, if you don't use it, you lose it. And the current royal families of Europe are losing it quick.
Or even if you use it, you lose it because your parliament is going to vote for the power to be taken away.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
an
I mean,
example
and
I can
actually,
think of.
I do agree with you, Fritz, that I'm a Jacobite. It's no secret by this point that the current guy I want to place on the throne of my glorious Jacobite Catholic America monarchy, whatever, is a gay guy who donates to modern art museums.
Who?
Franz Duke Bavaria. And
Oh.
it's but he obviously he doesn't have any kids, and I guess we know why. I mean, but it's I mean, and this, but I mean, I think it's partly not to, I guess the term would be gaslighting. That's what gaslight does. But partly the blame is on us because we've knocked these people out of power, at various points, culminating, I think, ultimately in like the first 2 decades of the 20th century is when the most European nobles lost their crowns. And it's they've had nothing to do, and they haven't really had to deal with the problems of governance, and so they've just sort of been allowed to go off and do all these things. Like the Habsburgs are still great, the different the Bourbon are in France are still pretty great. And but it's like my biggest problem is Franz Duke of Bavaria, and as much as I have hope for his successors, he doesn't. It just seems like he and like and a lot of the other German nobility actually, and all the other German nobility are just like, okay, this is how it is now. We're just gonna accept the status quo. We're not gonna try to restore our thrones and actually help our people. Um, and it's like I don't want there to be this upheaval. When and if monarchism comes back, I want it to be the old families, like the Habsburgs and all these other lesser known families that are really only known in the area in which they held sway. I really want it to be those families that are the ones leading the good fight, because um,
They're the
because
ones they're the ones with thrones to gain.
well, yeah, and I mean not just the fact that they're the ones with heirs to the land, but if I uh decided to rise up and overthrow the county and declare myself the Duke of county name here, uh nobody I'm not legitimate. I mean, it's like I'm just some random peasant who decided to declare myself a duke. I mean, there's no weight behind that. Now, if some king or whatever is like, I appoint thee, Charles York, Duke of county name here. Okay, then that would bear some weight. I mean,
Force has weight behind it. If you think about it, like I guess like this may sound radical, right? But maybe we should try thinking more outside the box, because when was the original European nobility established? After the fall of Rome, it was established by warlords.
Conquest.
Essentially, it's like, I mean, you could have the situation, I don't know, say like MS-13 or something, basically becomes more and more bold as society deteriorates and the police are less effective to do anything. You could just have essentially the head of an MS-13 gang become a de facto warlord. Ideal, and to be honest, there's probably a lot of similarities between them and what people like Clovis were. It's just that they became tempered by the Catholic Church, offering basically, we'll recognize your legitimacy as emperor or king, so long as you are like fine with Catholicism.
I think the sweet spot is finding a good man or woman to fill that position that also is tied to America's past. I think that's the sweet spot as far as a potential American monarch would go. I have no idea how you would do anything like that in Europe. I guess you could just have the former monarchs take the throne, but it would take a strong populist monarchist movement for that to happen. And honestly, I hate to say this, gang, but no one's coming to save us. This movement has to grow on its own, and we cannot rely on old royal families. Even if one winds up being our king, we cannot rely on their support. We need to rely on making people monarchists and making them monarchists that are convincingly so.
To be honest, I think before then, we have to make people Christian.
Yeah, we have to make people Catholic. I mean, here's the thing, right? If the people's oh, sorry, John, but if the people's faith is in order and they want to exercise that faith, across all aspects of their life, including politically, then things will get better. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. And I mean, really, and that's why I harp on religion a lot on this podcast. We all do to a greater or lesser degree, and that's really why it's so important. And what was established by that is that even though all these wacky lines you see and people coming in and out and moving up or down the tier ladder, as it were, in terms of what kind of noble they were, we see this uninterrupted lineage dating back hundreds of years, centuries, that millennia by the time it was all said and done. And for certain regions of Europe, they kept the faith. I mean, the faith was a constant despite all of the different ups and downs and left and rights.
More specifically than just saying people should become Christian, because now that you're mentioning this, is what people have to be convinced of or understand, which all of our ancestors would have understood, is that G.K. Chesterton kind of talked about, he said, like, tradition is the democracy of the dead, in the sense that our ancestors' views and beliefs hold weight even today. Whereas that is because everybody is atomized, families have been obliterated, and everybody is so darn selfish now. The idea that you owe anything to those who came before you. I mean, especially considering you have the whole CRT thing of teaching people that they should be horribly ashamed and hate their ancestors. People have to. No wonder monarchism makes no sense with the idea of people inheriting power when you have a completely atomized and individualistic society.
Now,
And now I believe that is a. I
as
believe that.
as a let me kind of respond to that. Now,
I'm going to give you.
absolutely,
I'm only going to give you about a minute or so because we've got to wrap.
uh, we can. Things aren't affected, and you could say, "Oh well, become Christian." There are Christians out there that vote Democrat every single election cycle.
Those
There
people are
Christians
going to be disappearing.
they need to be convinced. They need to be convinced that monarchy is right as Christian.
I think
Now,
no,
we're still majority Christian, if I'm not mistaken.
in all honesty,
We
I still
won
think
that battle. And I mean, sure, you can say they're not Christian, you can say all that stuff, but if they proclaim to be Christian, we need to start walking to that next step. What else do we need to do? Obviously, there are very, very, very devout Catholics in this country that vote Republican that really shouldn't be voting Republican, that should be Catholic, or that should be a Catholic monarchist. And that could be expanded to more traditional Protestants. So what are we doing wrong here? If
well,
they are
it's
traditional conservatives, we need to present monarchy to them, and we need to present monarchy.
well, I know we are almost out of time. But the problem is that we can do an entire episode on this. Is that we, and as Americans, we have segmented our religion from our politics, like the Dutch did, as soon as, because they had a billion different Protestant denominations going on in their country once everything said and done. And that is our real big problem. And Will has not had a chance to speak in 50 hours, so here you go, Will. Say whatever you want.
Actually, I'm handing the mic off to Fritz. He was trying to say something.
Oh, sorry.
What I'm saying is that, like, in the bigger picture, it feels almost like getting a king crowned. I could understand the argument that like, if you just do it now, you can kind of change things from the top down. But even to have even the hope of that actually occurring, you have to have a fundamental shift among people in the West,
yeah.
away from. People have to just be convinced that the current system is not going to help them. The current system.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm
when
not
it stops paying out.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we need to kill body today. What I'm saying is we need to formulate what we mean by monarchist, what we mean by monarchism, and what we mean by that.
It has
And
to be something bigger.
I actually think
the main thing that caused the monarchies of old, the conservative monarchies of old, to fall is they didn't have an answer to the Republican mob. They didn't defend their throne, and it was taken from them. We need to actually think about why we were monarchists.
I disagree with that because if you remember in World War I, it wasn't because they didn't have an answer. It's because, the Allies essentially starved the people into revolting against their monarchy through blockade and purposefully continuing the war.
Well, we need to honestly, intellectually think about why we were monarchists and not just say we need to become Christian first, which we obviously are Christian. I'm Christian, which is why I'm a monarch. Well, partly why I'm a monarch,
guys,
but they need to be connected.
Anyway, okay, so that is a great note to kind of wrap up on, but now it's time for my last word.
Because we're wrapping up, I will just say, Monsieur K, I know you asked me a question, and because Fritz, I guess, said he would only be here till 9, we'll just have to. I wrote it down. We will get to it next week.
Yes, we'll get to it next week. Anyway, time for my last word. January 6th is not just the anniversary of what the left is calling an insurrection. It was also the proper date of the Feast of the Epiphany, when the three magi came from the east to visit our Lord in the crib in Bethlehem, bringing him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. In the Catholic Church in the United States, that feast for some reason is transferred to the Sunday previous to January the 6th. The only place that celebrates it in the United States on the proper day are the parishes and communities that celebrate the Tridentine Latin Mass. And with that, we will close in prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
This is our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but
Deliver us from evil. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. Thank you very much, Fritz Imperial, for being a special guest.
Thank you for letting me coming on. It was fun.
Yeah, and we hope to have you on again sometime. Anyway, if you would like to join us, you can go onto our Discord server. Link is in the description. We will have I believe it's a public meeting. Is that right, John? Public meeting?
Yes.
Okay, public meeting on Sunday, or if you're watching us on YouTube, the
You missed
previous day. The
Yeah.
only way you can be involved in this is to join our Discord server. Link is in the description. We have public meetings on Discord every 2 weeks, and we are we have other social media. There's links to the other social media are going to be in the description down below. And if you would like to listen live to this podcast on Discord, Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern are the time in which you can do that. So, for our special guest Fritz Imperial, our Chancellor John Honors, our Vice Chancellor William Stout, and our Publicity Head Charles York, this is Victor Smith signing off. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.